The year was 2001. Picture rural Idaho, a vast expanse of land where the sky seemed wider, the stars brighter, and the silence deeper than anywhere else. It was a place of stark, almost isolating beauty, where towering pines met the jagged peaks of distant mountains. Life moved at a slower pace here, dictated by the rhythms of nature. Communities were small, tight-knit, relying on each other for everything from raising barns to fighting fires. The spirit of volunteerism wasn't just a concept, it was the lifeblood of these towns. People helped their neighbors, not because they had to, but because that's just what you did. Distances were great, resources scarce, and a helping hand could make all the difference. This reliance on each other fostered a profound sense of community, where everyone knew everyone else, and a shared history bound them together. Into this landscape came our volunteer firefighter. His name was Mark, and he was 32 years old. He was a man of ordinary stature, with a kind face etched with the lines of a life lived outdoors. He wasn't a hero in the traditional sense, but he was the kind of person who always showed up, always lent a hand. He was reliable, steady, and integral to the fabric of his community. Mark was the type of guy you could count on to be there when you needed him, whether it was to help fix a flat tire or respond to a house fire. He wasn't seeking recognition or praise, he simply wanted to contribute and make his corner of the world a little bit better. He had a quiet strength about him, a deep-seated sense of responsibility that made him a natural leader within the volunteer fire department. He had no children, no wife, only his beloved dog. The day he disappeared seemed, at first, like any other. Mark reported for his volunteer shift at the fire station, a small, unassuming building on the edge of town. The day's calls were routine, a false alarm at a local business, a minor brush fire quickly contained. He joked with his colleagues, shared stories about his dog, and went about his duties with his usual quiet efficiency. Yet, looking back, some recalled a subtle oddity. He was perhaps quieter than usual, a bit more introspective. He stared off into the distance, as if lost in thought. One colleague remembered him mentioning a strange feeling, a sense of unease he couldn't quite explain. But at the time, no one thought much of it. It was just Mark being Mark. As the day drew to a close, Mark finished his shift and headed out, promising to see everyone at the next training exercise. He never made it home. When he didn't return that evening, or show up for his scheduled shift at his regular job the next day, concern began to ripple through the small community. At first, there was disbelief. Mark was the most reliable person anyone knew. Maybe his truck broke down, and he was stuck somewhere without cell service. Maybe he had a family emergency he hadn't mentioned. But as the hours ticked by, disbelief turned to worry, and worry quickly escalated to panic. Something was terribly wrong. The tight-knit community was about to face a mystery that would haunt them for years to come. The search began immediately, a frantic scramble against the relentless Idaho wilderness. Volunteer firefighters, neighbors, friends, anyone who could spare a moment, joined the effort. They fanned out across the sprawling landscape, their calls echoing through the dense forests, each shout a desperate plea against the silence. Local law enforcement, initially viewing it as a missing person case, quickly recognized the growing unease and committed resources to the search. Search dogs, their noses to the ground, strained against their leashes, attempting to pick up any scent, any trace of the missing firefighter. Helicopters buzzed overhead, their rotors churning the air, their spotlights cutting through the thick canopy of trees, offering a bird's-eye view of the unforgiving terrain. The landscape itself became an adversary. Towering mountains, their peaks shrouded in mist, loomed over the search parties. Dense forests, a tangled maze of trees and undergrowth, hindered their progress, each step a struggle against nature's resistance. Rivers and streams, swollen from recent rains, presented treacherous obstacles, their currents swift and unforgiving. The weather, unpredictable and volatile, shifted from sunshine to rain to chilling winds, adding another layer of difficulty to the already daunting task. The challenging terrain slowed the search, hampered communication, and amplified the sense of isolation and desperation. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat, every rustle of leaves sent shivers down their spines. The vastness of the wilderness felt indifferent, swallowing the missing firefighter whole. Early leads emerged, flickering like distant stars in the darkness, offering fleeting glimmers of hope before fading away. A possible sighting near a remote logging road sent search parties scrambling, only to find nothing. A discarded piece of clothing, thought to belong to the firefighter, turned out to be unrelated. Rumors spread like wildfire through the small town, fueled by anxiety and speculation. Some whispered of a tragic accident, a fall from a treacherous cliff. Others spoke of foul play, a hidden enemy lurking in the shadows. Each lead, each rumor, brought a surge of hope, followed by the crushing weight of disappointment when it proved to be false. The emotional roller coaster took its toll on the searchers, their faces etched with fatigue and despair. As the days turned into weeks, the frustration mounted. The initial surge of adrenaline and determination began to wane, replaced by a gnawing sense of hopelessness. The vastness of the search area, the lack of concrete evidence, and the relentless challenges of the terrain began to wear down even the most optimistic among them. The community, once united in their resolve, started to fracture, their hope fading with each passing day. The weight of the unknown pressed down on them, a suffocating blanket of uncertainty. The search continued, but with a growing sense of resignation, a silent acknowledgement that the chances of finding the firefighter alive were dwindling with each passing hour. The vibrant, close-knit community found itself gripped by a shared sense of dread, a haunting premonition that something terrible had happened. The disappearance cast a long, dark shadow over the small town, forever altering its landscape. The investigation, though initially vigorous, soon found itself grappling with an almost unbearable dearth of clues. Detectives meticulously combed the firefighter's home, his workplace, and the surrounding areas, searching for any sign, any whisper of what might have befallen him. The fire station, usually a place of camaraderie and purpose, became a somber hub for the investigation, its familiar routines disrupted by the unsettling mystery. Every piece of equipment was scrutinized, every locker searched, every conversation replayed in the minds of those who had last seen him. Yet, nothing emerged to shed light on his sudden disappearance. The firefighter's truck, a vital piece of equipment in a rural community heavily reliant on volunteer services, was nowhere to be found. Its absence amplified the mystery, suggesting a deliberate act rather than a simple accident. The vast, rugged terrain presented both a challenge and a frustration. The dense forests, steep ravines, and unpredictable weather patterns made searching arduous and time-consuming. The lack of roads and accessible trails meant that search parties had to navigate through treacherous landscapes, often with little to show for their efforts. The detectives cast their net wide, interviewing family, friends, colleagues, and even casual acquaintances. Each interview was a painstaking process, sifting through memories, impressions, and alibis, hoping to find a thread that could lead them closer to the truth. Initial focus naturally centered on those closest to the missing firefighter. Disgruntled colleagues were considered, those who might have harbored jealousy or resentment. Estranged family members were questioned, their relationships scrutinized for any sign of conflict or animosity. Even local troublemakers, individuals with a history of run-ins with the law, were brought in for questioning. However, each lead turned into a dead end, each potential suspect cleared, leaving the investigators with more questions than answers. As weeks turned into months, the active search efforts dwindled. The vastness of the Idaho wilderness, coupled with the lack of concrete evidence, made it increasingly difficult to justify the continued expenditure of resources. The agonizing decision was made to suspend the active search and designate the case as a cold one. The lingering grief and uncertainty settled upon the community like a heavy fog. The hope that had once burned brightly began to flicker, replaced by a sense of resignation and despair. The unanswered questions continued to haunt the minds of those who knew and loved the missing firefighter, a constant reminder of the mystery that remained unsolved. The file was relegated to a storage room, joining countless other cases that had defied resolution, each one a silent testament to the enduring power of the unknown. The disappearance cast a long, dark shadow over the small Idaho town. It was a shadow that refused to dissipate, clinging to the community like a persistent fog. The vibrant, close-knit atmosphere that had once defined the area was now tinged with a palpable sense of grief and unease. Conversations often circled back to the missing firefighter, his name whispered with a mixture of sadness and bewilderment. The unanswered questions hung heavy in the air, a constant reminder of the void left behind. Life, of course, continued, but it was a life irrevocably altered, forever marked by the absence. The annual town picnic, once a joyous celebration, now felt incomplete, the laughter subdued, the memories bittersweet. The local volunteer fire department, once a symbol of unity and service, now struggled to maintain its morale, the camaraderie strained by the shared loss. The missing man's empty locker served as a stark reminder of the missing piece in their ranks, a constant source of pain and reflection. The tight-knit community found it difficult to move forward, haunted by the specter of the unknown. The family, of course, bore the heaviest burden. The pain of not knowing was a constant torment, a relentless cycle of hope and despair. Each sunrise brought a renewed wave of anguish, the realization that another day had passed without answers. They clung to the faintest glimmer of hope, refusing to completely surrender to the possibility that he was gone forever. Birthdays and holidays became agonizing reminders of his absence, the empty chair at the table a painful symbol of their shattered lives. They sought solace in memories, revisiting cherished moments, desperately trying to keep his spirit alive. But even those memories were tainted by the uncertainty surrounding his fate, the joy overshadowed by the lingering question of what had become of him. Moving forward felt like a betrayal, a tacit admission that they had given up hope. Yet, they knew they had to find a way to navigate their grief, to rebuild their lives, even as they carried the weight of their loss. Over the years, countless theories and rumors swirled through the community, each one more unsettling than the last. Some whispered of a tragic accident, a misstep in the unforgiving wilderness. Others speculated about foul play, suggesting a darker motive behind the disappearance. Some even entertained the notion that he had simply vanished by choice, seeking a new life far from the familiar confines of his small town. These rumors, though often unfounded, fueled the community's anxiety and perpetuated the cycle of speculation. They offered no solace, only adding to the existing confusion and distress. The lack of concrete information created a breeding ground for conjecture, each new theory further complicating the already tangled web of uncertainty. Despite the passage of time and the persistent rumors, the community never forgot the missing firefighter. Each year, a memorial service was held in his honor, a solemn occasion to remember his life and service. Friends, family, and fellow firefighters gathered to share stories, offer support, and reaffirm their commitment to keeping his memory alive. A local park was dedicated in his name, a lasting tribute to his contributions to the community. His name was etched onto a memorial plaque, a permanent reminder of his sacrifice. These acts of remembrance served as a testament to the enduring power of community, a collective effort to ensure that he would never be forgotten. The annual service was a poignant reminder of the unsolved mystery, but it also served as a powerful symbol of hope and resilience. Years passed, and the case of the missing firefighter faded from the headlines, settling into the collective memory of the town like a persistent ache. Birthdays came and went, holidays were celebrated with a noticeable absence, and the landscape of everyday life was forever altered by the unanswered question. The passage of time, however, does not always bury the truth. Sometimes, it allows for new perspectives to emerge, for old wounds to be re-examined with a clearer vision. And so it was with this case. Years later, a cold case unit, a team of detectives specializing in unsolved mysteries, dusted off the files, breathed new life into the faded documents, and approached the case with fresh eyes. They were outsiders, untainted by the emotional weight of the initial investigation, and driven by a relentless pursuit of the truth, no matter how deeply buried. Their arrival was met with a mixture of hope and skepticism. Hope, that perhaps, after all this time, answers could finally be found. Skepticism, born from years of disappointment and the fear of having old wounds reopened, only to remain unhealed. The cold case unit began by meticulously re-examining the existing evidence, poring over every document, every photograph, every interview transcript. They weren't necessarily looking for something new, but rather, for a new way of seeing what was already there. Advancements in forensic technology offered the potential to extract information that was previously undetectable, to analyze evidence with a level of precision that simply wasn't possible at the time of the initial investigation. Hairs, fibers, and even trace amounts of DNA were subjected to rigorous testing, each offering a potential clue, a thread that could unravel the mystery. But perhaps even more crucial than the re-examination of physical evidence was the decision to revisit the human element of the case. Witnesses and persons of interest were re-interviewed, their memories probed, their stories scrutinized. Time can play tricks on memory, blurring the lines between fact and fiction, distorting perceptions, and obscuring the truth. But time can also reveal hidden truths, exposing inconsistencies and cracks in previously unwavering narratives. The detectives looked for subtle shifts in demeanor, for hesitation in their voices, for anything that might suggest a hidden secret or a lingering guilt. A seemingly insignificant detail, a forgotten comment, a fleeting expression, any of these could be the key that unlocked the truth. It was during one of these re-interviews that a forgotten detail resurfaced, a detail so seemingly insignificant at the time that it was overlooked, dismissed as irrelevant. A neighbor recalled seeing a truck, one that didn't belong to anyone in the immediate area, parked near the fire station on the day of the disappearance. The truck was described as old, beat-up, and an unusual color of green. At the time, the neighbor couldn't recall anything specific about the driver, but the cold case detectives recognized the potential importance of this detail. It was a thread, a fragile connection to the past, that needed to be explored. The focus of the investigation began to tighten, like a noose slowly circling a neck. After years of dormancy, the case had sprung back to life, and the renewed scrutiny cast a long shadow over everyone involved in the original inquiry. But now, instead of a wide net cast over a sea of possibilities, the detectives were reeling in a single, very large fish. The cold case unit had meticulously reviewed every file, every interview transcript, every piece of evidence, and one name kept resurfacing, demanding a closer look. This wasn't a new suspect, not exactly. This was someone who had been on the periphery from the start, one of the many names briefly considered and then dismissed due to lack of concrete evidence. But now, with the benefit of time and technological advancements, the faint whispers of suspicion were growing louder, more insistent. They started building their case, brick by painstaking brick. It wasn't about finding a smoking gun, because in a case this old, those were usually long gone. It was about weaving a tapestry of circumstantial evidence so compelling that it left no room for reasonable doubt. Timelines were reconstructed, meticulously piecing together the suspect's movements in the days and weeks surrounding the disappearance. Old witness statements were revisited, and the detectives noticed subtle inconsistencies that had been overlooked the first time around. Forensic analysis, now far more advanced than it had been in 2001, was applied to existing evidence, searching for traces that might link the person to the missing firefighter. Surveillance became a key component of the strategy. The suspect's every move was watched, their phone calls monitored, their online activities scrutinized. The hope was to uncover a pattern of behavior, a slip-up, something that would betray their guilt. It was a waiting game, a test of patience, but the detectives knew that pressure could crack even the most hardened facade. They were looking for a flicker of anxiety, a furtive glance, anything that would suggest a guilty conscience. The suspect, unaware of the constant observation, continued their life, seemingly oblivious to the ever-tightening net. But the investigation was taking its toll. The weight of the past, the fear of exposure, was beginning to manifest in subtle ways. The suspect grew increasingly irritable, withdrawn, and paranoid. Their sleep patterns became erratic, their appetite diminished. They jumped at shadows, misheard conversations, and saw suspicion in every face. The pressure was building, a silent, invisible force that threatened to shatter their carefully constructed world. The detectives watched, waited, and prepared to make their move. They knew that the truth was buried somewhere within the suspect's mind, and they were determined to unearth it. The circle was closing, and the endgame was rapidly approaching. The interrogation room was stark, a study in utilitarian blandness. Gray walls, a metal table bolted to the floor, 2 chairs, one occupied, the other waiting. The air hung thick with unspoken accusations, the silence punctuated only by the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. He sat there, across from the investigators, a man who had lived a seemingly ordinary life in a quiet corner of Idaho. Now, under the intense scrutiny of the cold case unit, his carefully constructed facade was beginning to crumble. The lead investigator, a seasoned detective named Miller, leaned forward, his eyes unwavering. He had reviewed the case files countless times, each detail etched into his memory. He knew the inconsistencies, the gaps in the suspect's story, the subtle tells that betrayed a deeper truth. The questioning began subtly, a slow dance of words designed to lull the suspect into a false sense of security. Miller started with innocuous questions, his routine on the day of the disappearance, his relationship with the missing firefighter, his alibi. The suspect answered smoothly, his voice calm and measured. But Miller was watching, always watching, for the slightest flicker of hesitation, the briefest pause before answering, the involuntary twitch of a muscle. As the hours wore on, the tone of the interrogation shifted. Miller began to press harder, confronting the suspect with the inconsistencies in his story, the discrepancies between his account and the accounts of other witnesses. He presented circumstantial evidence, piecing together a mosaic of suspicion that painted a damning picture. The suspect remained defiant, denying any involvement in the firefighter's disappearance. He maintained his innocence, insisting that he had nothing to hide. But the pressure was mounting. The investigators kept at it, relentless in their pursuit of the truth. They used a variety of tactics: good cop, bad cop, appeals to his conscience, appeals to his sense of self-preservation. They showed him photographs of the missing firefighter, reminding him of the pain and suffering his disappearance had caused. They played audio recordings of his previous interviews, highlighting the contradictions in his statements. Slowly, subtly, the cracks began to appear in the suspect's carefully constructed defenses. His answers became less certain, his voice less steady, his body language more agitated. He fidgeted in his chair, avoided eye contact, and began to sweat profusely. The investigators could sense that he was on the verge of breaking. The tension in the room was almost palpable, a heavy weight pressing down on everyone present. It was a battle of wills, a test of endurance. And the truth, they knew, was about to be revealed. The air became thick with anticipation, every breath held, every gaze fixed. The room, silent but for the softest of respirations, waited with bated breath as the suspect's resolve began to waver, the dam finally about to break. The interrogation room was a study in contrasts. Stark fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a harsh, unwavering glare on the scene below, a scene heavy with unspoken accusations and palpable tension. The suspect, a man who had been a fixture in the small Idaho town for decades, sat rigidly in his chair. His face, once open and friendly, was now etched with worry lines, his eyes darting nervously around the room, avoiding direct contact with the detectives across the table. He was a man adrift, caught in the relentless tide of an investigation that was pulling him under. The detectives, seasoned veterans of countless interrogations, maintained a calm, professional demeanor. They were masters of observation, their keen eyes picking up on the subtle tells, the fidgeting hands, the averted gaze, the slight tremor in his voice. They knew that the truth was a fragile thing, often buried beneath layers of deception and self-preservation. Their job was to patiently chip away at those layers, exposing the raw, unvarnished reality. The interrogation had been going on for hours. The detectives had started with general questions, establishing a baseline of normalcy, before gradually tightening the noose. They had presented inconsistencies in his earlier statements, pointed out discrepancies in his alibi, and confronted him with circumstantial evidence that painted an increasingly damning picture. The suspect had remained steadfast in his denials, repeating his story with a practiced ease that only served to heighten their suspicions. But the detectives were relentless. They knew that everyone had a breaking point, a point where the pressure became too much to bear, where the carefully constructed facade crumbled, revealing the truth beneath. They continued to press, their questions becoming more pointed, their accusations more direct. They spoke of the firefighter, of his dedication to the community, of the pain his disappearance had caused. They appealed to the suspect's sense of humanity, urging him to do the right thing, to ease the suffering of the family who had been living in limbo for so long. As the hours wore on, the suspect's composure began to fray. His breathing became more labored, his hands trembled uncontrollably, and beads of sweat dotted his forehead. The detectives could sense that he was on the verge of cracking. They leaned in closer, their voices softening, their eyes filled with a mixture of understanding and resolve. They were offering him a way out, a chance to unburden himself, to finally tell the truth. They were so close. The air crackled with anticipation. The breaking point was imminent. The truth was about to surface. All it took was one final push. The detectives waited patiently, watching, listening, ready to pounce. The confession had been given, a weight lifted from the investigators' shoulders, but a different kind of burden settled upon them. Now came the somber task of recovery. The suspect, now the convicted, had provided a detailed account of where he had disposed of the firefighter's body, a remote location deep within the sprawling national forest that bordered the small town. It was a place known more for its undisturbed beauty than its secrets, a place where nature reigned supreme, and where the echoes of human tragedy seemed impossibly out of place. The search team assembled quickly, a mix of law enforcement personnel, seasoned search and rescue volunteers, and even a few members of the firefighter's own former company, their faces etched with a mixture of grim determination and palpable grief. The air hung heavy with anticipation as they ventured into the wilderness, following the directions provided by the one person who wished the discovery to never happen. Each step was deliberate, each rustle of leaves or snap of a twig amplified in the otherwise deafening silence of the forest. They followed a winding trail, deeper and deeper into the woods, until the familiar landmarks started matching the description the investigators had been given. Then, the location was revealed. It was a secluded ravine, hidden from view by a thick tangle of underbrush and towering pines. The air here was noticeably colder, a stark contrast to the sun-drenched areas they had traversed. A sense of foreboding settled over the search team as they carefully made their way down the steep slope, their eyes scanning the terrain for any sign of what they were looking for. There, partially concealed beneath a layer of fallen leaves and decaying branches, they found them, the remains of the missing firefighter. Time seemed to slow to a crawl as the team carefully documented the scene, collecting any evidence that might further corroborate the confession and provide additional clues about the circumstances surrounding the death. The remains were carefully extracted and transported to the coroner's office, where forensic experts would conduct a thorough examination to confirm the identity and determine the exact cause of death. Though the process was long and arduous, the community needed closure. after so many years of uncertainty, the confirmation brought a collective release of grief and a sense of resolution that had eluded them for far too long. The firefighter could finally be brought home. The investigation had yielded a name, a face, a potential motive. But to truly understand why a life was stolen, why a community was left to grieve for decades, one had to delve into the shadows of the killer's past. It wasn't enough to know the why clawed at the edges of the truth, demanding to be understood. The suspect's background was unremarkable on the surface. A childhood spent in the same rural landscape as his victim, a series of ordinary jobs, a life that seemed to blend seamlessly into the fabric of the small town. But beneath that placid exterior lay a churning sea of resentment and unfulfilled ambition. Jealousy, it seemed, was the insidious seed that had taken root and grown into a monstrous act. The victim, the volunteer firefighter, embodied everything the suspect craved but could never attain. He was well-liked, respected, a pillar of the community. He possessed a quiet confidence and a natural charm that seemed to effortlessly draw people in. The suspect, by contrast, felt overlooked, insignificant, trapped in a life that felt suffocatingly small. The firefighter's successes, however modest, were perceived as personal slights, fueling a simmering anger that eventually boiled over. Perhaps there was also a financial component, a desperate need that warped into a twisted justification. Money troubles, a looming debt, a sense of being unfairly burdened, these factors may have compounded the resentment, creating a volatile mix of envy and desperation. The planning, as revealed in the confession, was chillingly methodical. It wasn't a crime of passion, but a carefully calculated act designed to eliminate a source of frustration and potentially alleviate financial strain. The suspect had observed the firefighter's routines, identified vulnerabilities, and meticulously crafted a plan that seemed foolproof. The execution was brutal, swift, and devoid of remorse. The suspect lured the firefighter to a secluded location under false pretenses, exploiting their shared connection in the victim's inherent trust. The details, once revealed, were horrifying in their banality. A sudden attack, a struggle, a life extinguished in the remote wilderness. The aftermath was a masterclass in deception. The suspect meticulously concealed any trace of their involvement, disposing of evidence, fabricating alibis, and playing the part of a concerned community member. They even participated in the initial search efforts, feigning concern while harboring a dark secret. For years, they lived with the weight of their actions, a silent predator lurking in plain sight, until the relentless pursuit of justice finally caught up with them. The question lingered, could anyone have seen this coming? Were there signs, subtle clues, that were missed in the chaos of the initial investigation? Or was the suspect a master of disguise, concealing their true nature behind a mask of normalcy? The arrest was swift, efficient. Years of painstaking investigation culminated in a moment that seemed both anticlimactic and profoundly significant. The suspect, once a neighbor, a colleague, a seemingly ordinary member of the community, was now in custody, facing charges of murder. The quiet streets of the small town held their breath. The news spread like wildfire, a mixture of relief and disbelief washing over the residents. Some felt a sense of vindication, the gnawing uncertainty finally replaced by the cold, hard truth. Others struggled to reconcile the image they held of the accused with the heinous crime he was alleged to have committed. The wheels of justice began to turn. Preparation for the trial commenced, a complex and demanding process. Evidence, meticulously collected and re-examined over the years, was now carefully organized and presented. Witnesses, some of whom had given their statements years ago, were called upon to recount their memories, to relive the events that had cast such a long shadow over the community. Legal strategies were developed, arguments crafted, and counter-arguments anticipated. The prosecution meticulously built its case, piecing together the fragments of evidence, the subtle clues, the inconsistencies in the suspect's story. The defense, equally determined, sought to cast doubt, to challenge the evidence, to protect their client's rights. The courtroom became the center of attention, a stage for the unfolding drama. Opening statements set the tone, each side laying out their version of events, their interpretation of the evidence. Witness testimonies followed, each recounting their experiences, their observations, their memories. Cross-examinations challenged their accounts, probing for weaknesses, inconsistencies, and biases. The atmosphere was charged with tension, every word carefully weighed, every gesture closely scrutinized. The jury, the arbiters of truth, listened intently, their faces etched with concentration. The weight of their responsibility was palpable, the knowledge that their decision would have a profound impact on the lives of so many. Days turned into weeks as the trial progressed. The prosecution presented its case, methodically laying out the evidence, connecting the dots, building a narrative of guilt. The defense countered, challenging the evidence, questioning the witnesses, presenting alternative theories. The courtroom became a battleground, a clash of legal minds, a struggle for truth and justice. Finally, after weeks of testimony and argument, the time came for closing arguments. Each side presented their final summation, a last opportunity to persuade the jury, to sway their opinion. The prosecution painted a picture of a cold-blooded killer, motivated by jealousy and resentment. The defense argued that the evidence was circumstantial, that reasonable doubt remained, that their client was innocent. The jury then retired to deliberate, to weigh the evidence, to consider the arguments, to reach a verdict. The waiting was agonizing, the silence in the courtroom heavy with anticipation. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the jury returned. The foreman stood, his face solemn, and announced the verdict. The sentencing hearing was a somber affair. The courtroom, once buzzing with anticipation and legal maneuvering, now held its breath. The convicted murderer stood before the judge, a figure diminished by the weight of their crimes. The judge, his face etched with gravity, delivered the sentence. It was a sentence designed to reflect the severity of the crime, to offer some measure of solace to the grieving community, and to serve as a deterrent to others who might contemplate similar acts. The exact details of the sentence, the number of years, the specific stipulations, echoed through the silent courtroom, each word a hammer blow against the facade of normalcy that had been so brutally shattered. It was a sentence that attempted to quantify the immeasurable loss, to balance the scales of justice in a world where true balance was often elusive. The heart of the hearing, however, lay not in the pronouncements of the judge, but in the raw, unfiltered emotion of the victim impact statements. One by one, members of the firefighter's family, friends, and colleagues stepped forward to address the court, their voices trembling with a mixture of grief, anger, and a desperate longing for what could never be. They spoke of the void left by the firefighter's absence, the milestones missed, the laughter silenced. They recounted the sleepless nights, the endless questions, the gnawing uncertainty that had haunted them for so many years. A spouse spoke of a future stolen, of dreams shared and never realized. A child, now grown, spoke of the pain of growing up without a parent, of the constant reminder of what had been taken away. A colleague, a fellow volunteer, spoke of the firefighter's dedication, his unwavering commitment to serving the community, his willingness to risk his own life to protect others. Each statement was a testament to the firefighter's character, a vivid portrait of a life tragically cut short. They spoke not only of their personal loss but also of the loss to the community, the loss of a valuable member, a trusted friend, a pillar of strength. These statements were not merely words, they were cries from the heart, expressions of profound pain that resonated throughout the courtroom. They were a powerful reminder of the human cost of crime, a stark contrast to the cold legal arguments and procedural formalities that had dominated the trial. The statements stripped away the abstractions and revealed the raw, visceral impact of the murder on the lives of those left behind. They were a plea for justice, a demand for accountability, and a testament to the enduring power of love and memory. The verdict brought a sense of closure, a sense that justice had finally been served. The long years of uncertainty, the endless speculation, the lingering grief, had finally come to an end. The community could finally begin to heal, to move forward, to rebuild. The shadow that had hung over the town for so long began to dissipate, replaced by a glimmer of hope. But even with the verdict, even with the sentence, the scars remained. The pain of loss did not simply vanish. The memories of the firefighter, both joyful and sorrowful, lingered in the hearts of those who knew and loved him. The community, though relieved, was forever changed. The sense of innocence, the feeling of security, had been shattered. The knowledge that such a crime could occur within their midst, that someone they knew and trusted could be capable of such violence, left an indelible mark. The echoes of that time linger, not just in the court records and faded newspaper clippings, but in the very fabric of the town itself. The memory of the volunteer firefighter is carefully preserved, a testament to the man he was and the void his absence created. There are photographs in the fire station, annual scholarships awarded in his name, and stories whispered from one generation to the next. He is not forgotten, nor will he be. His life, though tragically cut short, continues to inspire acts of service and a deep appreciation for the selfless individuals who dedicate themselves to protecting others. The case also underscored several critical lessons learned in the crucible of loss and the slow burn of unanswered questions. The community rediscovered its own strength, its ability to rally together in the face of adversity, to support one another through unimaginable grief. The unwavering dedication of law enforcement, particularly the cold case unit, served as a reminder that justice, though sometimes delayed, can ultimately prevail. The case also highlighted the importance of meticulous investigation, of never dismissing even the smallest detail, for it is often in the seemingly insignificant that the truth lies hidden. The resolution of the case shone a light on the remarkable work of cold case units. These dedicated teams possess the patience, expertise, and resources to revisit old cases, to apply new technologies and investigative techniques, and to bring closure to families who have long suffered in silence. Their success serves as a beacon of hope, demonstrating that no case is truly unsolvable, that justice can be found even after years of darkness. They are a testament to the enduring power of human determination and the unwavering commitment to seeking truth. While the arrest and conviction brought a measure of relief, a palpable sense of resolution, the community's healing process remains ongoing. Trust, once shattered, is slow to rebuild. The revelation that the perpetrator was someone known, perhaps even trusted, by the victim and the community, left deep scars. The pain of betrayal mingled with the grief of loss, creating a complex and enduring wound. The healing process is a journey, not a destination, a gradual process of acceptance, forgiveness, and a renewed commitment to building a stronger, more resilient community, one that remembers the past but looks towards a brighter future. The shadow may linger, but so too does the light of hope. The revelation of the killer's identity sent ripples of disbelief throughout the small town. It was someone they knew, someone who had shared meals, attended community events, and perhaps even stood alongside the victim, united in service. The very notion that such a person could harbor such darkness was almost incomprehensible. It forced everyone to reevaluate their perceptions of those around them, to question the facades people construct, and to acknowledge the unsettling truth that evil can reside in the most unexpected places. The tight-knit fabric of the community, once a source of strength and comfort, now felt strained, frayed by the knowledge that a wolf had been living among the sheep for so long. The past, once a comforting repository of shared memories and traditions, now cast a long, unsettling shadow. Every conversation, every interaction, every fleeting moment between the victim and the perpetrator was now scrutinized, replayed in the minds of those who knew them both. What had seemed innocuous at the time now took on a sinister hue, imbued with the knowledge of what was to come. The past became a minefield of unanswered questions and haunting what-ifs, a constant reminder of the darkness that had been lurking beneath the surface. It was a stark illustration of how the past can continue to shape the present, how unresolved secrets can fester and poison the present, and how even the most idyllic settings can be stained by acts of unspeakable violence. The tireless efforts of the cold case unit served as a powerful reminder of the importance of perseverance in the pursuit of justice. Even after years of silence, when hope had dwindled and memories had faded, they refused to let the case die. They meticulously reviewed old evidence, re-interviewed witnesses, and employed cutting-edge forensic technologies to uncover the truth. Their unwavering commitment demonstrated that justice, though often delayed, can ultimately prevail. It was a testament to the dedication of law enforcement professionals who dedicate their lives to solving the unsolvable, to bringing closure to grieving families, and to ensuring that no crime goes unpunished, no matter how long it takes. It was a beacon of hope in a world often darkened by despair, a reminder that even the coldest cases can be cracked with persistence and determination. This case underscored the critical need to never abandon the search for truth, no matter how elusive it may seem. Even with a conviction secured and the perpetrator brought to justice, some facets of the crime remained shrouded in mystery. The full extent of the planning, the precise sequence of events, and the innermost thoughts of the killer may never be fully known. Some questions lingered, casting a shadow of uncertainty over the otherwise conclusive resolution. Perhaps the killer took some secrets to the grave, or perhaps the truth was simply too complex and fragmented to ever fully reconstruct. Whatever the reason, the lingering mystery served as a reminder of the limitations of human understanding, of the inherent ambiguity of human nature, and of the enduring power of the unknown. The knowledge that some pieces of the puzzle would forever remain missing added a layer of complexity to the already tragic case, a reminder that even in the face of closure, some wounds may never fully heal. 667 words. The story, spanning years and etched in the memory of a rural community, concludes. The disappearance of the volunteer firefighter, once a chilling enigma, found its answer not in the vast wilderness, but within the confines of familiar relationships. The stark beauty of Idaho served as a backdrop to a tragedy that resonated far beyond its borders, a testament to the enduring power of secrets and the eventual triumph of truth. Justice, though delayed, arrived, bringing a measure of peace to a community scarred by uncertainty. But the echoes of the past, the questions that lingered unanswered, served as a constant reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of even the most idyllic settings. The human cost, the years of anguish endured by the family and the community, could never be fully repaid, a solemn truth that underscored the gravity of the crime. The heart of this narrative beats with the rhythm of profound loss and the slow, agonizing march toward resolution. The dedication of the Cold Case Unit, the relentless pursuit of truth, showcase the unwavering commitment of those who dedicate their lives to unraveling the tangled threads of the past. It served as a beacon of hope, illuminating the darkest corners of human experience and offering solace to those who had long suffered in silence. The story reminds us of the delicate balance between trust and betrayal, and the enduring strength of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable adversity. The firefighter's memory lives on, not only as a victim of a senseless crime, but as a symbol of resilience and the enduring power of community. If you found this true crime story compelling, I encourage you to subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into cases that have shaped communities and challenged our understanding of human nature. By subscribing, you'll stay updated on our latest investigations and help us continue to bring these important stories to light. Your support allows us to dedicate the time and resources needed to research and present these cases with the respect and sensitivity they deserve. And if you're interested in exploring another case of unexpected betrayal and justice served, I recommend watching our video on the unsolved mystery of the missing hiker in the Appalachian Trail. It's a gripping tale of survival, suspicion, and the relentless search for answers, a story that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew. Click the link in the description to watch now and join us as we unravel another complex puzzle of the human experience.